Hey everybody, and welcome to the weekly scopes from the 2nd to the 8th of November. Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's weekly scopes. If you've heard this before, you can skip, but this is just the intro on how I, formulate these astrology weekly readings. I use astrology and my intuition to give you advice how you can practically use the knowledge of the stars and the planets and apply them to your life. So my weekly scopes are all based on GMT time and on Vedic Constellational Astrology. So now I'm just going to explain what Vedic Constellational Astrology is and how it differs from Western astrology. So the precession of the equinox is sort of like something that happens in astronomy and astrology, where the Earth's axis undergoes a slow circular motion over 26,000 years, and basically this means that this motion causes a shift in the position of the equinoxes, and also the calculation Vedic and Western astrologies use. So around 2,000 years ago, the tropical and sidereal Vedic astrology signs of astrology were aligned in the same position. So if the sun was in Scorpio in Vedic astrology, it was also in the constellation of Scorpio in Western astrology. But because of the precession of the equinoxes, this has caused a gradual westward sort of like drift of the tropical Western signs. So basically these signs and the Western signs shift 1 degree with every 72 years. So as a result of this ongoing shift, when Western astrology says the sun is in the constellation of Pisces, it's typically in the constellation of Aquarius. Still, this is because the degree, orb and the date for Western and Vedic astrology are 24 degrees, 24 days apart. So in Western astrology, the sun enters the constellation of Pisces around the 19th of February each year, but actually the sun doesn't arrive into the constellation of Pisces until the 13th to the 15th of March each year, and Vedic astrology takes this into account because it's based on the fixed star positions, and Vedic astrologers use sidereal calculations. So as a result, Vedic astrology takes into account the actual positions of the constellations in the sky at any given time, and also considers the precession of the equinox, adjusting for the shift in the position of the equinoxes over time. But in terms of Western astrology follows the tropical zodiac, which is based on the seasons rather than fixed star positions. Western astrologers also do not directly account for the precession of the equinox in their calculations as well, so this results in slightly different calculations and interpretations that are given whether we're using Western astrology or Vedic astrology. So yeah, as I said, Western astrology uses specific dates, so every year, regardless of where the sun actually is at the sky, the sun moves into Pisces around the 19th of February. So yeah, this discrepancy, this misalignment between the tropical zodiac and the actual positions of the constellations has led to a discrepancy between Vedic astrology and Western astrology. So I consider the actual where the sun and the moon are and where Mars and Venus are at any given time, and this is how I formulate these sort of like weekly scopes. So yeah, thanks for listening to this, and let's dive into this week's weekly scope. Okay, so now I'm just going to explain what parallels and contra parallels are in astrology, because I use them in my chart interpretation. So declination in astrology is the measure of how far a celestial body is, such as the sun, whether it's either north or south of the celestial equator, and the celestial equator is an imaginary line in the sky above the Earth's equator, which us astrologers use in our interpretation. So parallels happen when two planets are on the same declination, either both planets are on the north side or either both planets are on the south side, and this alignment increases the influence of the involved planets. So it's similar to a conjunction aspect, as it amplifies their energy, making the effects of the planets more pronounced. Contraparallels, on the other hand, happen when two planets are on the same declination, but one is in the north and one is in the south. So this alignment creates tension, which is similar to an opposition aspect, and it can lead to conflict, challenges and inner struggles between the energies of the planets involved. So contraparallels highlight areas of friction or contrast in our lives, urging us to find balance between the opposing forces at play. When transiting parallels and contraparallels happen, they can sort of like trigger significant events, shifting consciousness and periods of intense growth and transformation. So I look at these aspects closely during chart analysis to understand how planetary energies interact and influence each other during a specific time frame, to pinpoint key periods for personal development, relationship dynamics or career shifts and other shifts like karmic shifts and stuff like that. Because I just find using contraparallels and parallels gives me more depth in interpretation, so I use them. So contraparallels and parallels in astrology serve as markers for potential challenges or breakthroughs, guiding us towards more self-awareness, love, acceptance, understanding, forgiveness for ourselves and others, and shifts in consciousness and growth. So overall, just a shift in our mindset if we allow for it. So parallels and contraparallels just kind of like provide valuable insights into the complexities and nuances of the astrological interactions between planetary movements. So yeah, that's the end of what contraparallels and parallels are. This week we have Venus making a contraparallel to Chiron. This entered on the 2nd November, is exact at 5:52 AM on the 6th of November, and leaves us on the 10th of November. And Venus is in Libra and Chiron is in Pisces retrograde. And then we've got Pluto making a semi-square to the Moon's North Node. This is exact on the 7th of November. This entered on the 24th of October and leaves us on the 19th of November, so lasting us for the next few weeks. And Pluto's in Capricorn and the Moon's North Node is in Aquarius, and then Mars makes a contraparallel to Jupiter and is entered on the 27th of October, is exact on the 8th of November at 4:07 and leaves us on the 26th of November, so really affecting for the whole of this month in effect, right? So Venus's contraparallel to Chiron, adds to the flavour of the week, which wants us to transform power dynamics, heal relationship wounds and balance action with wisdom. So Venus's contraparallel to Chiron is when Venus, our values and relationships, meets the wounded healer, and this brings dynamic tension between relationship pleasure and relationship wounds. It puts a spotlight on how our past hurts influence our current relationships, creating opportunities for healing through conscious relationship choices. With Venus in Libra, we are looking for harmony, and Chiron in Pisces brings that compassionate healing, supporting bringing beauty to our broken places. And Pluto semi-square to the Moon's North Node. Pluto is transformation and power, and we're having to deal with friction that comes between our desire for control and our soul's growth, creating a developmental tension that pushes us to transform how we use our power or allow others to use their power against us on our path forward. This is a subtle but potent aspect that asks, are your power dynamics aligned with your highest path? Mars is contraparallel to Jupiter, and when Mars, our driving assertion, meets Jupiter, our growth and wisdom, it's a dynamic tension between focused action and bigger perspective. It brings challenges in balancing our immediate desires with longer term wisdom. While Mars in Scorpio channels energy with intensity and purpose, Jupiter in Cancer reminds us to consider emotional wisdom and nurturing principles in our actions. And ultimately, this week's aspects bring healing to our relationship wounds, transformation in our relationship with power, and wants us to take balanced, focused action with wisdom. So it means our relationships are both triggering and healing this week, and our deepest wounds can be triggered, preparing us for the deeper transformation that comes from facing home truths, right? And in terms of the Sabian symbols this week, we have Pluto at the 8th degree of Capricorn, which is birds in the house singing happily, and this represents the joy that comes when natural energies are integrated into structured environments. And during this weekly, astrology, Pluto's semi-square to the moon's north node symbolises a transformation that comes through finding harmony between our primal forces, our aggressive reactions, sometimes our gut feelings, and established systems, And the moon's north node at the 23rd degree of Aquarius, a big bear sitting down and waving all its paws, symbolises power that has trained or been civilized, strength that has learned restraint. And the moon's north node, receiving this semi-square from Pluto, wants us to express power in ways that are both authentic and socially constructive. So in terms of the overall energetic pattern of this week, positively, it can bring great awareness of our relationship patterns that come from old wounds, opportunities to bring conscious healing to our partnerships and relationships, the increased ability to transform power dynamics that no longer serve growth, the capacity to balance focused action with bigger wisdom, and bringing that deeper understanding of how our past hurts have outshaped our current values. It gives us the courage to confront relationship issues with both honesty and compassion. It gives us increased skill in using power in the service of growth rather than control. And it gives us the ability to go after desires while maintaining ethical awareness and recognition of how healing wounds can create greater beauty in our relationships, and it allows us to integrate our passion and wisdom in decision making, right? In terms of the challenges, in terms of relationship, it can trigger and activate old wounds and insecurities. It can be a tension between the desire for control and the need for growth. We can have a difficulty balancing immediate desires with longer considerations. Power struggles in important relationships and situations can happen with the Pluto semi-square, the Mars energy, right? We can have trouble confronting uncomfortable truths about our relationship patterns. We can feel vulnerable when confronting and dealing with our wounds in relationships. There can be internal resistance to the necessary transformations in, power dynamics in our relationships. And there can just be a tendency towards the excessive force, use of it, right, and insufficient action. And we can deal with the intensity of emotions, and this can really be hard for us to deal with, especially when we're working on healing as well. And it can be impatience with the gradual nature of relationship healing this week as well. So, it's important to keep patience when we can and just try to take one step at a time and be gentle with ourselves and others for the inevitable mistakes that we can make this week, right? Okay, so as always, that's the summary version. If you want to go in depth and learn about the karmic reasons and psychological and how it affects our relationships, career, business, and each zodiac sign and all that good stuff, then continue to listen. So in terms of Venus's contra parallel to Chiron, it brings a friction between our relationship patterns and our self-worth issues, and this can cause pain this week. But positively, if we see it as a powerful opportunity to consciously recognize and heal deep-seated wounds around love, belonging and self-value, attracting relationships or situations that act as a mirror, compassionately showing you where you need to heal, finding profound beauty and acceptance in your perceived flaws and vulnerabilities, having the courage to set new, healthier boundaries in relationships based on self-respect rather than fear, transforming past relationship pain into a source of empathy and wisdom that can help others. But negatively, because old feelings of inadequacy, rejection, and not being good enough in relationships can come up intensely. This can lead to a heightened sensitivity to criticism or perceived, slights, wrongs, and this can lead to conflicts or withdrawal. And we can replay old wounds as well, and this can tempt us to fall into familiar, unhealthy patterns, whether it's addictive, overindulgence in alcohol, drugs, or toxic relationships and hookups and stuff like that as well. And our financial decisions, our value-based choices can be influenced by unhealed emotional pain, so we can overspend this week and seek validation from, toxic sources that are not really good and are detrimental to our overall emotional, psychological, spiritual, physical, and even financial health. So, we have to sort of lean into radical self-compassion this week with this one. And when a relationship trigger comes up, don't react immediately. Pause and ask, what old wound is this touching? Your task this week is to be the healer of your own heart. Spend time in activities that make you feel worthy and get internal validation by doing this instead of relying on external validation. Have that vulnerable conversation with yourself or others you've been avoiding, not to blame, but to express your true feeling. And this contra power this week is asking for integration, for self-love, forgiveness, acceptance, loving yourself for where you are, and remembering that your greatest wounds, when acknowledged, become the source of your deepest connection and beauty. Pluto makes a semi-square to the moon's north node. Now this is exact on the 7th of November, and although it's minor aspect, as I said earlier, it's also irritating because it creates friction and demands us to change. Here we've got the planet of death, rebirth, and subconscious power. Pluto meeting, rating, itching the point of destiny and future growth. These forces are necessary if uncomfortable validation and evolution growth. And intuitively, we can have a compulsive power infusing us to let go of deep-seated habit, belief, or attachment patterns that are blocking our personal growth and destined path. It uncovers a hidden personal power or talent that, once integrated, can accelerate your growth. It brings a profound realization that frees you from collective or family patterns that have held you back. And this intense focus needed to purge emotional or psychological baggage makes you lighter for the journey ahead, and it allows you to gain insight into the true, often hidden power dynamics within a group you're associated with. And negatively, it can add to the intense power struggles that can come up this week, especially within groups or teams regarding the future direction of the group or team. Or you may decide that you want to go out on an individual journey and someone wants to keep you as part of the team. You can feel that we're being forced to change or relinquish, give up control against our will, because Pluto often throws us in the deep end and takes away all of our toys when we want to keep them. I've experienced this and it can be quite frightening, but I can attest that although it can be dark and shadowy and oh no, my toy's been taken away, ultimately it is for your highest good. We can unearth a dark secret or truth that disrupts our sense of security and our path forward. It also brings resistance to evolutionary changes that deep down are necessary for your growth. So ultimately, this aspect is about alchemy, transforming outdated parts of your life into gold for the future. The key is surrender, not struggle. And in terms of what you need to release your grip on, it could be a grudge, a seek for revenge, control, or an identity tied to a past version of yourself. The east wind of new ideas is blowing. Instead of fighting, adjusting your ways of being. And you can ask yourself how you can consciously channel your raw, bear-like, instinctive power represented by the North Node, into a skill that serves a higher purpose. This is a week for doing the deep internal work that clears the path for your destiny. Don't shy away from the shadow, it holds the key, And Mars' contrary to Jupiter creates a dynamic tension between the planet of action, drive and conflict, represented by Mars, and the planet of expansion, luck and belief. This contrary signifies a clash of energies, blowing the potential for action out of all proportion and creating a go big or go home mentality. So positively, it brings an enormous increase of confidence and motivation to tackle big ambitious projects and goals, the courage to take massive calculated risks that can lead to significant expansion or success. It adds to the boundless physical energy and enthusiasm that we can have, and we can use this to inspire and motivate ourselves and everyone around us. And it gives us the ability to fight passionately and effectively for a belief or principle or cause that you care deeply about. And a lucky break can come this week at a sheer force of will and assertive action, but negatively, extreme overconfidence can lead to reckless actions, and this can lead to unnecessary conflicts or biting off more than you can chew. My way or the highway attitude that alienates allies, people that could work with you, and turns discussions into arguments, and it can inflate minor disagreements into major philosophical battles or legal disputes, and we can burn through energy and resources and money at an unsustainable rate, and we can start a dozen projects with immense gusto but lack the follow through to finish any of them. So the best use of this energy is to initiate something major, but it can be terrible for nuance and subtleties, because it's really big. Let's do it, come on, so we have to try and respect other people's boundaries and the room. And before you act, ask, is this a hill I'm willing to die on? Channel this expansive drive into physical activity, a long run, a competitive sport, or a demanding workout that can work wonders, or even Tai Chi yoga, or jumping on a rebounder. If you have a big goal, use this energy for bold, forward steps, but make a pragmatic plan for follow through. Debate ideas with passion, but don't avoid making it personal. This is about fighting for something, not against someone. Direct their immense force wisely, and you can move mountains, this week. So ultimately, this week's energy is all about progressive healing and transformation. Our wounds can become more visible, not to cause pain, but to create awareness that leads to healing. Pay attention to how past hurts might influence current relationships. Where do you withdraw, overcompensate, or protect yourself based on old wounds rather than present reality? Consider how ascetic experiences, balanced conversations, and conscious fairness may help you heal relationship patterns, especially the way you relate to yourself, right? And remember that this week, that tension between this week's energies creates growth through contrast rather than easy flow, and we may feel subtle but a persistent tension around power dynamics this week can have the affect your growth path. You can ask yourself, how are you using your power? Are your methods of influence and control aligned with your highest growth, or are they keeping you locked into old patterns? This semi-square creates trust and friction to motivate change without overwhelming you. So at the end of the week, it creates a day for balanced, focused action with bigger wisdom when Mars meets a contrary to Jupiter, and this supports taking well-considered steps that honour both your immediate desires, represented by Mars in Scorpio, and your longer-term emotional wisdom, represented by Jupiter in Cancer. It's about finding a sweet spot between passion and perspective. The key to dealing with this energy is to begin with healing relationship wounds, move into transforming power dynamics, and with balanced action guided by wisdom, creating beauty from the broken places in relationships within yourself, allowing the contrast between harmony and wounding to put a spotlight on paths towards healing that set the stage for deeper transformations. So in terms of how our career and business in general is affected by this week's aspects, Past professional disappointments or hurts might be influencing current work relationships this week, and if we're hesitant to share ideas after previous criticism, or we may be overcompensating to prove our worth based on past feedback. So, this transit, the Venus contra-parallel Chiron energy, brings these conscious patterns to our attention, particularly in collaborative projects and team dynamics. Because Venus is in Libra, if we focus on creating fair, balanced professional relationships, this can be healing right now, and we can consider how beauty, harmony and diplomacy might be incorporated into the workplace healing process. And as the week progress towards the Pluto North Node semi-square, which becomes exact on Friday, the workplace dynamics come into focus in terms of power, the power dynamics, and this can create productive tension around how power is used in professional environments. And it wants us to sort of ask, are our leadership approaches aligned with the organisation's highest evolution, or are control tactics creating resistance to necessary growth? This is a brilliant time to transform subtle power imbalances that limit professional development, and with the Mars-Jupiter contra-parallel becoming exact on Saturday, this supports balancing decisive action with bigger professional wisdom, and it helps us go after our career goals with both intensity, which we get from Mars being in Scorpio, right, and ethical consideration, which we get from Jupiter in Cancer, so we can consider how our professional actions affect not just outcomes but also the emotional well-being of colleagues and organisational culture. We can confront past professional disappointments that still influence current workplace relationships, and we can also create a more balanced, fairer approaches to workplace collaboration, transform power dynamics that limit professional growth, balance focused career plans with bigger professional wisdom, and consider the emotional impact of business decisions, not just practical outcomes. In terms of friendships, we can notice where past friendship wounds influence current social relationships, create more balanced, reciprocal friendships where we give and take in balance through conscious choices, transform subtle power dynamics in social circles that limit authentic connection, and balance honest communication with emotional sensitivity, and look for deeper friendships without sacrificing discernment about who deserves your trust. So using good judgment on who to let into your inner circle and who to keep out. Perhaps you have trust issues from past betrayals, and you can hesitate to get close after previous rejections in friendship or any relationship, and maintain surface level friendships to avoid vulnerability. So this week brings to our awareness these patterns without judgment, and since Venus is in Libra, this creates a more balanced approach to friendship healing, and consider which friendships feel fair and mutually supported versus those where old wounds create imbalance through either withdrawal or overgiving. And because these week's aspects bring a persistent tension around influence and control and how they operate in our social circles, we can ask ourselves, are there manipulative dynamics at play? Does someone always decide what the group does? This is a proper good time to transform friendship patterns that limit authentic connection through unhealthy power dynamics, and just be careful about manipulative dynamics, and thinking about really homing in on, does someone always make group decisions, and why should group decisions be made by one person? Be truthful about your needs and boundaries without being unnecessarily harsh or insensitive to friends' emotional needs, and this works across all relationships. If you're self-partnered, again, it's a time to heal wounds around harsh self-discipline, self-sabotage, self-neglect, procrastination as well, and how you express yourself. Consider where you hold yourself to standards you've never expect of others, or where you deny yourself pleasures you readily help your friends gain, and it's about focusing on fair self-treatment, asking yourself, are you using power against yourself, or to improve yourself, with self-compassion as well. This energy helps us go after our personal goals with birth determination, Mars in Scorpio, and emotional wisdom, Jupiter in Cancer, and consider how you can challenge yourself to grow without sacrificing self-kindness in the process. So notice where past wounds influence how you value and treat yourself. Create a more balanced self-relationship through conscious choices. Transform your relationship with personal power to support authentic growth. Balance focused self-improvement with compassionate self-acceptance, and honour both your desire for transformation and your need for nurturing. In hookup relationships, think about if you use them to avoid vulnerability. Are you looking for validation through them rather than gaining it through yourself? Or are you having trouble enjoying physical pleasure because of past hurts? This transit brings to consciousness these patterns, and it isn't about, avoiding or forcing casual relationships to be something they're not, but rather making sure they're mutually respectful and considerate. Asking yourself, are there manipulative elements in your hookups? Is consent clear, as it's important to transform any casual intimacy patterns that are toxic and unhealthy. With Mars in Scorpio, it wants us to maintain ethical awareness and emotional intelligence, and consider how you go after pleasure while still respecting both your own needs and emotional well-being. So notice how past relationship wounds influence your approach to casual intimacy. Create more balanced, mutually respectful hookup experiences. Transform power dynamics in casual relationships to make sure healthy, interactions. Balance the pursuit of pleasure with ethical considerations, and honour both physical desires and emotional wisdom as well. In committed relationships, think about where relationship wounds are influencing your current partnership, where old patterns of abandonment, betrayal, criticism, or emotional vulnerability might play out in subtle ways. This transit supports bringing to our awareness and healing to those patterns that are sort of like stopping us from making conscious relationship choices. It's a time to bring beauty into our experiences, spend quality time, meaningful compromising, and date nights as well, and this can help heal relationship wounds as well. It's a good time for couples therapy and relationship coaching to help confront past hurts in relationships, because sometimes we don't deal with stuff like that. We brush it under the carpet, we don't ask the questions, we just assume things, so we need to just question and make sure we're comfortable about our decision making processes. Who has the influence? Is it equal in your relationship? Giving yourself time to transform imbalances in your relationship as well, and bringing more passion and wisdom into the relationship as well. This week's energy helps us go after our desires within the relationship, represented by Mars and Scorpio, while maintaining perspective on longer term emotional needs, represented by Jupiter in Cancer. And we can just consider how we can honour both our need for tenderness and intensity, and long term nurturing, and getting our immediate needs met as well. So it's ultimately, in committed relationships, a time to confront relationship wounds influencing our current relationship decisions. So thinking about, if you've had breakups in the past and you haven't processed these breakups, how not doing so is influencing any current relationship you have, so you can bring more balance and harmony through conscious relationship choices, and transform power dynamics to support the relationship's highest growth, and balance passionate plans with emotional wisdom. Honour both intensity and tenderness within the partnership as well. So in terms of the best weekly actions to take, create a relationship wound inventory, reflect on how past hurts influence current relationships, noticing patterns without judgment or shame. Practice conscious contrast, so notice the difference between wounded relationship patterns and healing ones, using the contrast to put a spotlight on paths forward, bring beauty into broken places, introduce harmony, aesthetics or balance into areas of the relationship that feel wounded or disconnected, evaluate power dynamics, honestly assess how you use influence and control in various relationships and situations, know in alignment or misalignment with your highest growth, transform one subtle control pattern, choose a single power dynamic to consciously shift this week, perhaps by saving decision making or releasing the need to manage outcomes, balance intensity with perspective. So when taking decisive action, pose to consider both immediate desires and long-term wisdom, create relationship rituals, design simple practices that acknowledge wounds while supporting healing, perhaps through art, nature connection or mindful conversation. Practice fair self-treatment. Notice where you're unfair to yourself compared to how you treat others, and make one concrete change towards greater self-fairness this week, and deal with emotional intensity with compassion. When triggered, use breathing techniques to create space between stimulus and response, allow both honesty and kindness, and harmonize, balance opposing energies. Look for creative ways to honor contradictory needs for both honesty and diplomacy, both power and surrender, both focus and growth. So ultimately this week means taking actions that acknowledge relationship wounds while creating beauty and balancing those very same areas, recognizing that healing doesn't mean perfection but rather conscious integration of both wounded and whole aspects of ourselves. So yeah, in terms of the combined psychological meanings, Venus's Chiron contraparallel highlights the relationship between our capacity for pleasure and connection, Venus, and our wounded vulnerability, Chiron, asking us to look at how early attachment wounds influence our current relationship patterns. Perhaps we struggle with trust, intimacy, or receiving love because of childhood experiences where connection was painful or inconsistent. From a depth psychology perspective, this transit supports bringing shadow material around relationships into conscious awareness, and the contrast between Venus, what we value and desire in relationships, and Chiron, where we feel inadequate or wounded, creates a productive tension that puts a spotlight on our unconscious patterns. So ask yourself, what parts of yourself do you hide in relationships due to shame or fear? You can also ask yourself, how might accepting these wounded aspects actually create more authentic connection? The Pluto North Node semi-square activates the psychological tension between our drive for control, represented by Pluto, and our evolutionary growth, represented by the Moon's North Node. This aspect helps us recognize where control mechanisms that once served as a psychological sort of protection, defense mechanism, might now be limiting our development. Perhaps strategies like perfectionism, hypervigilance, or emotional withholding, developed as flexible adaptive responses to early environments but have outlived their usefulness. And I've battled with these as well, so it's important to really question, because a lot of the time, when we're younger, we can't protect the ways that we can allow ourselves to do as adults, but sometimes we let those childhood wounds get in the way of us adulting, and it isn't easy, but being aware of the problem is how we can solve it, right? The Mars's Jupiter contraparallel represents the psychological integration of our instinctive drives, represented by Mars, with our higher understanding, represented by Jupiter, and it supports bringing awareness to how our actions are influenced by both immediate desires and bigger values. So we can ask, how might we be acting from compulsion rather than choice? How might greater consciousness about your motivations lead to more satisfying outcomes? And collectively, these transits create a weekly psychological world that supports becoming more conscious of how relationship wounds, power dynamics, and action patterns either serve or get in the way of our authentic evolution. Karmically, the Venus contraparallel wants us to heal relationship patterns that we may have carried across lifetimes. Perhaps we've repeatedly experienced betrayal in relationships, consistently struggled with self-worth in partnerships, or developed patterns of using beauty or charm to compensate for deeper insecurities. This transit helps us recognize and begin releasing these ascent patterns through conscious awareness, and the Pluto North semi-square brings sort of like power and evolution karmic patterns to the front of our attention. So perhaps we've misused power in past lives, creating karma that now manifests as challenges around control and transformation, or maybe we've repeatedly avoided our power due to the fear of its consequences, creating patterns of disempowerment that limit our growth. This aspect supports healing those patterns by helping us align our use of power with our soul's authentic evolutionary path, and the Mars-Jupiter parallel highlights karmic patterns related to action and wisdom. Perhaps we've habitually acted impulsively without considering bigger consequences, or conversely, we've overthought decisions to the point of paralysis, and this transit supports finding balance between action and consideration, helping us to learn the karmic lesson that wisdom without action causes gaps in learning, while action without wisdom creates unnecessary suffering. So ultimately, these transits create a weekly karmic opportunity to heal and transform relationship wounds, power imbalances and action patterns that have persisted across lifetimes. Spiritually and esoterically, the Venus Chiron Contra represents the alchemical process of creating beauty from woundedness, not by denying pain but by transforming it into wisdom and compassion, reminding us that our wounds aren't spiritual failures but rather doorways to deeper understanding when approached with consciousness. The Pluto North Node semi-square embodies the spiritual principle of aligned power, using our capacity for transformation in service of our highest evolution rather than for control or self-protection. This aspect reminds us that true power isn't about domination but about conscious participation in the growth process, surrendering to transformation while maintaining our role as co-creators. Mars' Jupiter represents the spiritual practice of karma yoga, action performed with wisdom and detachment from outcomes, and it supports us taking decisive steps on our path while maintaining awareness of the bigger picture and the deeper purpose of our actions. It reminds us that spiritual growth involves both doing and being, both focused intention and surrendered acceptance. Together, these transits create a spiritual opportunity to understand how our human experiences of relationship power and action can serve as powerful pathways for soul growth when approached with consciousness and aligned with higher purpose. So ultimately, we have to remember that healing doesn't mean achieving perfection or erasing wounds, but rather bringing consciousness to how past hurts influence present experiences, recognizing how our broken places have made us more compassionate, more authentic and more appreciative of genuine connection. The Japanese art of kensagi repairs broken pottery with gold, highlighting rather than hiding the cracks. Similarly, this week invites us to repair relationship wounds with the gold of consciousness, creating relationships that are more beautiful, or having been broken, being mindfully mended, So it reminds us that, true healing involves both proper boundaries and compassionate acceptance. The Chiron in Pisces energy and the Venus in Libra, and it wants us to give up forms of control, because sometimes the very power dynamics we cling to for security actually get in the way of our growth, and the Pluto semi-square North Node is asking us and putting the spotlight on this, reminding us that true empowerment may seem hard, but if we release inflexible control mechanisms and allow transformation to happen organically, guided by alignment with our highest path rather than fear-based protection of the status quo, then we can open ourselves up to a whole new world. And it wants us to have the motivation to find that sweet spot where passion and wisdom inform each other and act decisively, and use wisdom with action and action with wisdom, finding that balance right, offering us a natural rhythm that supports our growth, creating openings for powerful transformations, which in turn provide the understanding that we need to make wisdom-guided actions and decisions. So in terms of soul-searching questions to ask to help us with our self-reflection, we can ask, how have our relationship wounds shaped our capacity for compassion, discernment and authentic connection? Where might we be using power or control in ways that feel safe but actually limit our growth and evolution? How can we honour both our desire for decisive action and our need for bigger perspective thinking in our current relationships and situations? So now I'm just going to give guidance for each of the 12 Sun, Moon and Rising signs, right? So Aries with Mars, your ruler, making a contra parallel to Jupiter this week. We can deal with tension between your need for emotional depth and your desire for nurturing growth. It's all about balancing intensity with sensitivity in our close relationships, and healing any wounds in our partnerships through balanced communication, and using the productive tension between our career goals and friendship relationships to transform how we balance individual achievement with community involvement. Taurus with Venus, your ruler, making a contra parallel to Chiron. It brings opportunities to heal old wounds around worthiness in relationships, and as these surface, remember they're not coming up to hurt you but to help you heal through conscious awareness. And the tension between your belief systems and your highest path are helping you transform your belief systems that may have provided comfort in the past but now limit your growth. And also you need to find balance between your work and your family this week as well, and meeting the needs of your home life commitments, Gemini. Your sectors of service and unconscious patterns are highlighted this week. So relationship wounds connecting to helping others or daily work can surface for healing, wanting you to bring balance to how you care for yourself and others, and making sure you care for yourself and others in a fair and honest way, and transforming how you share resources and vulnerability as you go after your highest path, and balance direct communication this week with emotional sensitivity, especially in important conversations. Cancer with Jupiter in your sign making that contra parallel to Mars. It brings focus to balancing emotional wisdom with intense action. The Venus contra parallel can bring up wounds connected to creative expression or romantic relationships. The tension between relationship commitments and powerful growth can transform how you balance partnerships with individual growth this week. Trust your emotional wisdom while honouring your need for passion, Leo, your home and career are highlighted this week. So it's time for you to heal family relationship wounds through bringing greater balance and harmony into your domestic life, and productive tension between your daily routines and your long-term goals can transform how you balance immediate service with your growth vision this week. And financial decisions can come under the spotlight for you this week, so that you can make them with more emotional wisdom as well as focused intensity, so it can help you make financial plans that are not just based on emotional impulsiveness but emotional constructiveness. Virgo, this week brings healing opportunities to your communication patterns and learning processes. Old wounds around being heard or valued can come up for healing, and this supports bringing balance and beauty to how you express yourself. Transform how you balance creative self-expression with community involvement, and communicate with both piercing insight and emotional sensitivity, and this can help you bring balance and honesty into your relationships. Libra, identity healing opportunities come for you this week through this week's aspects, runes around being valued for all your authentic self rather than just your people-pleasing, harmony-making abilities may surface. This transit supports bringing balance to self-worth issues and transform in how you balance your home life with your career goals. And also you can deal with financial decisions with more focused determination and emotional wisdom as well this week. Scorpio, with Mars in your sign making a contra parallel to Jupiter and Pluto, your ruler, semi-square in the moon's north node, it brings transformative energy that's quite powerful to help you with identity and communication issues. You can be made aware of unconscious relationship patterns that are getting in the way of your growth, and this can bring greater awareness to the hidden dynamics that's stopping your growth. And there can be tension between communication habits and your bigger belief systems this week, but these are meant to help you transform how you evolve and express your truth, so balance intensity with sensitivity in the self-expression this week. So Sagittarius, with Jupiter contra parallel Mars, your ruler, it wants you to be open to new experiences, but balance this need of yours with focused action and wisdom rather than just impulsivity. This week, the vibrant tyrant energy is helping you heal friendship wounds or group dynamics through bringing greater harmony to social relationships that can help you transform your relationship with people and material resources in the service of your highest values. So it's important to balance optimistic vision with emotional depth as you go after your important goals this week. In Capricorn, with Pluto in your sign forming a semi-square to the moon's north node, this week is about connecting you with your highest path. So this week can help you heal any career and relationship wounds by bringing greater balance to professional relationships and other relationships, and the tension that you can feel between your self-concept and identity, and which path you need to and direction you need to go in to grow, can transform how you express your personal power in service and growth. So it's important to balance ambitious drive with emotional wisdom in your leadership roles. And Aquarius, with the moon's north node in the sign receiving a semi-square from Pluto, this brings subtle but important evolutionary tension that can help you heal wounds connected to belief systems or higher education by bringing greater balance to your pursuit of truth. And by midweek, the Pluto North Node semi-square creates productive tension between unconscious patterns and conscious identity, and this can help you transform hidden influences that affect your authentic self-expression. So balance revolutionary wisdom with emotional depth. And Pisces, with Chiron in your sign making a contra parallel to Venus, it connects you to your identity and self-worth. So wounds around being valued for your sensitivity and intuition can come up for healing, and this all happens to help you transform how you balance your friendship circles with your deepest values and resources, helping you deal with the need for you to reach your personal goals with considerations of your need to be part of a family or friendship group, allowing you to balance intensity and wisdom this week. So in terms of the mantras this week, your mantra for Aries is I balance intensity with sensitivity, finding strength in honouring both my passionate nature and my emotional wisdom. My relationships heal when I bring both directness and diplomacy to difficult conversations, creating space for truth and harmony to coexist. Taurus, I heal relationship wounds by bringing beauty and balance to places of pain, finding value in both my wholeness and my vulnerability. My path forward opens when I transform beliefs that once provided comfort but now limit my growth and authentic expression. Gemini, I create service that honours both others' needs and my own well-being, finding healing in a balanced giving way rather than depletion and depleting your own energy, and my relationships deepen when I transform how I share resources and vulnerability, balancing self-protection with authentic openness. Cancer, I express emotional wisdom through conscious action, finding strength in both nurturing sensitivity and focused determination. My creativity grows when I heal wounds around self-expression, balancing the need for approval with authenticity. Leo, I create a home environment that supports both emotional healing and practical structure, finding balance between past patterns and present choices. My daily work aligns with my highest purpose when I transform routines to support both immediate service and long-term vision. Virgo, I communicate with both precision and care and compassion, finding healing in expressing my ideas with balanced confidence rather than perfectionism. My creative self-expression serves community when I transform how I share my gifts, balancing personal authenticity with collective contribution. Libra, I value myself for both my harmony creating abilities and my authentic needs, finding healing in balanced self-expression rather than external validation. My personal path aligns with my innermost self when I transform how I balance career ambitions with home and family needs. Scorpio, I channel intensity with wisdom, finding power in both focus, determination and bigger perspective. My unconscious patterns transform when I bring awareness to hidden dynamics, healing relationship wounds through honest examination rather than control or avoidance. Sagittarius, I go after my vision with both enthusiasm and emotional depth, finding wisdom in balancing optimistic growth with focused action. My social relationships heal when I bring greater harmony to group dynamics, valuing both individual expression and collective well-being. Capricorn, I transform my relationship with power, finding evolution in using influence with both authority and alignment with higher purpose. My professional relationships heal when I bring greater balance to workplace relationships, valuing both achievement and authentic human exchange. Aquarius, I evolve through transforming unconscious patterns, finding growth in bringing awareness to hidden influences that affect my authentic oppression. My perspective increases when I heal wounds connected to my belief systems, balancing intellectual understanding with emotional wisdom. Pisces, I heal identity wounds by valuing my sensitivity as strength, finding worth in both my intuitive gifts and practical contributions. My resources align with my values when I transform how I share and receive, balancing boundaries with generosity in meaningful conversations. So, content creators should focus on dealing with content this week that bridges healing, vulnerability with transformative wisdom. So, content that gives frameworks for identifying relationship wound patterns, beautiful visual or written content that brings aesthetic quality to healing discussions, personal stories about transforming relationship pain into wisdom, practical tools for bringing balance to wounded relationships, content that normalizes relationship healing as an ongoing process rather than a destination, especially like the lifelong journey of balancing your own individual psychological, emotional, spiritual wounds, right, and understanding yourself on every level. Also exploring how relationship healing connects to personal empowerment, content that helps people identify power dynamics that limit growth, tools for transforming control patterns to aligned influence. You can have interviews with people who have successfully dealt with relationship healing, giving resources for telling the difference between protective control and an evolutionary surrender, giving frameworks for decision making that honour both passion and wisdom, content that helps people balance focus, determination with the bigger perspective, giving tools and strategies for taking decisive steps without losing emotional intelligence, and resources for dealing with intensity with both courage and sensitivity, content that bridges the gap between knowing and doing in personal growth, and ultimately throughout the week, content that acknowledges the connection between healing, transformation and balanced action, how bringing consciousness to relationship wounds creates the foundation for transforming power dynamics, which This in turn supports taking actions that honour both focus and wisdom, creating content that helps your audience deal with relationship healing with both grace and courage, showing how acknowledging wounds doesn't mean wallowing in victimhood, but rather creates opportunities for conscious growth when approached with both honesty and beauty. And remember that the most valuable contribution as a creator during this period is demonstrating how opposite energies such as vulnerability and strength, control and surrender, passion and wisdom can work together to create holistic growth. Your audience needs to see how different aspects of themselves can complement rather than contradict each other on the path of authentic healing and transformation. So now I'm just going to go through the daily aspects that are influencing us day to day this week. So on the 2nd of November, the moon enters Pisces at 5:57 a.m. Venus makes an opposition to Chiron at 6:38. The moon enters its gibbous moon phase at 7:30. Venus enters Libra. Venus makes a quintal. I'll learn to speak one day. To Uranus at 7:56 a.m. The sun makes a sesquiquadrate to Saturn at 9:23. The moon enters its void of course at 10:18. And Venus's square to Jupiter is exact at 11:17. So Venus is in Virgo and Chiron is in Pisces, Uranus is in Taurus, Saturn's in Pisces and the sun's in Libra, Jupiter's in Cancer. So the moon in Pisces adds to our weak empathy, creative imagination, but we can, because Neptune energy can always make us overindulge drugs, alcohol and anything that's toxic to us. Our boundaries can be blurred and we can feel foggy and we may want to be manipulated, right? So the best use of this energy is to tune into your dreams, practice compassion and empathy and let your intuition guide you. The gibbous moon allows us to build momentum on our work and projects and any healing goals this week, increases our focus and it gives us anticipation for what's about to bloom, so it can make us really needing, giving us that energy, that's the one, to do what this week wants us to do, which is to let go of everything that's holding us back from blooming, from growing into newness. But unfortunately it can add to the impatience and anxiety of this week as well, especially if we feel that things ain't moving fast enough, especially on our healing journey. It's best used to change plans and trust the process. Venus in Libra restores balance and harmony in beauty relationships and creative plans, but it can lead to indecision and people pleasing if we're not careful. So the best use of this is to work on developing peace within and without, enjoying art and creativity and connection, bringing fairness into all you think, do and receive, right? Well, attempting to, because we can't really control what people do, but we can control what we allow in our close proximity, right? So if someone refuses to be fair with you and respect your boundaries, then you will have to distance yourself from them. It's as simple as that, right? So Venus's opposition to Chiron works the same as the conjugal vow, right? It allows us to heal wounds related to love and self-worth. It increases our ability to deal with being vulnerable and compassion, but it adds to the painful memories that can come up this week. And Venus is biquintal to Uranus, nice sort of energy that helps us make those creative breakthroughs and can bring exciting new relationships and things into our environment, right? But it can add to the restlessness and impulsiveness of the week, especially when it comes to love and money. The best use of this energy is to try something new, let your heart surprise you. The sun sesquiquadrate to Saturn helps with discipline, responsibility and maturity, but it can add to us feeling restrictive, especially when we're falling short. The best use of this energy is to take responsibility for your actions and set boundaries. It inspires us to be generous, optimistic and big-hearted in our gestures, right, and to celebrate things, but to keep the balance as well. Today is a day of being open to generosity and optimism, restoring balance and harmony in relationships, relationships, practicing forgiveness and honest self-reflection, trying something new in art, love and friendship, looking for balance in your things but don't overdo it, and work and collaborate and celebrate with others, allowing yourself to be open to creative problem solving in workplace disputes or in the workplace in general, and deepen relationships through honesty and shared beauty. In terms of the question to ask yourself today, you can ask, where do you avoid facing your own imperfections in love or creativity, and how may being open to them today lead to genuine healing and harmony? To integrate today's energy, you can write a letter of forgiveness to yourself or another without needing to send it, try a new creative activity or visit an art space for inspiration, practice heart-centered meditation and focus on balance and acceptance. On the 3rd of November, Venus makes a pinkwatch to Saturn, so this adds to our week, allowing us to find those creative solutions to relationship and financial challenges, to mix beauty once again with responsibility, but it can add to the feelings of distance, awkwardness, anxiety, emotional coldness, especially if we're trying to please everyone. The best use of this energy is to practice patience, change your expectations and look for ways to honour both your heart and daily responsibilities. Ultimately, today's energy helps us with emotional maturity. The best use of this energy is to learn to be flexible to change without losing your sense of self, be resourceful and protect what matters to you, right? You will thrive today by honouring your commitments without sacrificing your own needs, allowing yourself to really be mature with your emotional responses, compromising with others and using wisdom to know when to compromise and bend, right? Ultimately, it's a great energy today to have subtle but lasting improvements in your finances and relationships, increase patience and resilience, and we need that this week, right? So over the next few days, this Venus conquest to Saturn brings that, great. But it can add to the fear of rejection or not being enough. There can be tension between our personal desires and responsibilities. Against it, it can compound the frustration we can have with our slow progress and feelings of distance or awkwardness in love, right? In terms of our career and relationships, it's best to not rush decisions. Relationships may feel a bit cold and distant, but honest communication and patience will help you grow closer in the long run. If you're single, focus on self-worth and quiet self-care. So in terms of questions to ask, you can ask, where do you feel torn between your heart's desires and your sense of duty, and how might gentle compromise today lead to deeper self-acceptance? So to integrate today's energy, write down one area where you feel tension between love and responsibility, brainstorm a small change that you can make, practice mindful breathing when you notice frustration or impatience, reach out to someone for gentle, honest conversation about your needs, it's a chance to practice patience and honour your commitments today, and find quiet strength in subtle changes. On the 4th of November, Mars makes a trine to Neptune, Moon enters Aries, Mars makes a biquintile to Chiron, and Mars makes an opposition to Uranus. So these energies last the next few days. The Moon in Aries allows us to add more motivation and courage to our sense of self, right? It allows us to make those fresh starts, but negatively it can make us more impulsive and impatient. And the best use of this energy is to start something new, or facing our problems head on. Mars is trine to Neptune can also add to the boundaries, blurring and escapism tendencies that can happen this week with the other Neptune aspects, right? But it inspires compassionate action, creative flow and spiritual motivation. It's best used for healing and helping others. Mars's biquintile can bring up sensitivity issues and add to them really and make us feel exposed, but again, it adds to the ability for us to heal old wounds, especially finding creative solutions to our pain, right? And it's important to approach your vulnerabilities with courage and look for unconventional ways to heal. So this is a week of finding new ways to deal with old problems, right? Mars's opposition to Uranus adds to the sudden breakthroughs we can have this week. It brings to our attention the desire and need to break through from what's limiting us, but it can add to the impulsive actions and the accident impatience and rebellious outbursts that can happen when we don't pay attention this week, or we just act too much in a rush. So just try and be gentle, be open to change, but pause before making drastic decisions. Channel any restlessness into innovation. In terms of a question to ask yourself this week, you can ask, where do you resist change out of fear, and how might being open to uncertainty today lead to genuine healing and new beginnings? Take brave steps towards your goals, but stay flexible. Reach out for support if old wounds surface. Practice mindfulness before making big decisions. Channel restlessness into healing projects. Watch out for feeling torn between safety and freedom, escapism or avoidance of reality, and just have the courage to try something new. Integrate this energy by trying a new creative or physical activity. To channel restless energy, practice grounding techniques like deep breathing before making big decisions, and reflect on our old wound and think about what brave, compassionate action you can take to heal it. So on the 5th of November, there's a full supermoon in Aries at 1:20 p.m, and the moon goes void, of course, at the same time at 1:20 as well. So this brings powerful clarity, courage, and the desire need to break free from old patterns. It can trigger impulsive reactions, emotional outbursts, and a sense of restlessness. Best used to release what no longer serves you, set brave intentions, and take decisive action to your goals. The super moon intensifies emotional awareness, increases your intuition. Everything can feel bigger and more significant. It can increase our sensitivity, and this can lead to us being overwhelmed with drama if not grounded. It's best used to honour our feelings and use this desire need for energy for meaningful change. And when the moon goes void, of course, it helps us to, reflect and integrate after the full moon's peak, and just let the dust settle before making big changes as well. So ultimately, the Aries supermoon is asking us to release old baggage and step courageously into a new chapter, highlighting the need for authenticity and decisive action, while the moon void, of course, symbolises a pause for integration. Ultimately, it's a day of emotional release, brave action, and the need for mindful integration, letting go of what's holding you back and stepping into your power, expressing your needs and allowing space for both action and reflection, adding to the courage to release old patterns and authentically express yourself, but watch out for impulsive decisions and outbursts once again, and overwhelming from increased intensity of emotions, right? Practice a full moon ritual, write down and burn what you're ready to let go of. And I've done a whole special on the Aries full moon if you want to check that out in more depth, where I look at it from every angle. You can channel this energy into creative or physical plans and have honest conversations about your needs. You can ask, where do you hold back your true desires out of fear, and how might expressing them today lead to greater freedom and happiness? Write down a list of what you're ready to release, tear it up, or burn it as a ritual with your body, dance, walk, or exercise to channel the full moon energy. Practice mindful breathing to ground yourself after the emotional peak, So on the 6th of November, we've got a lot going on. Venus is contra parallel to Chiron, is exact at 5:53. The moon enters Taurus at 6:17 a.m. There's a sextile between Pluto and Mars, a quinquats between Venus and Neptune, a sextiquadrat between Neptune and the Sun, a quinquats between Uranus and Venus. So there's a lot going on today, right? So ultimately, the moon in Taurus grounds us this week, and we need that, right? It grounds our emotions, bring comfort and stability, but it can add to us being stubborn and being resistant to change. The best use of this energy is to focus on self-care, enjoy simple pleasures, and build steady progress. The Mars sextile to Pluto empowers us to take decisive action and transform any challenges, right? But it can add to the power struggles that can come up this week, especially if you push too hard. It's best channeled into meaningful goals and deep inner work, focusing on your self-love and worth, and healing any wounds around those, which is the main theme of this week. Focusing on self-care, enjoying simple pleasures, and building steady progress in your life. Venus is quinquats which again adds to, the blurred boundaries and confusion in relationships that can happen, wanting to be lied to and wanting to manipulate or be manipulated, and people please, because this energy can just cloud our vision, but it increases our creativity and spiritual longing, so it's great for spiritual practices like meditation, yoga, tai chi, breath work, all of that. The best use of this energy is to trust your intuition, double check facts before making decisions though, to be sure you're making the right one, and if you don't feel like you are making the right decisions, pause on making decisions. The Sun's sextile conjunct to Neptune inspires imagination and empathy, but it can add to the foggy thinking and escapism. So today is a really Neptune and Uranus day, right? So this is like explosive, unexpected events with, kind of being cloudy and hazy in our thinking as well. So, if you need time out, have that time out. But the Venus conjunct Uranus really motivates freedom in love, but it can add to the restlessness and sudden changes in relationships. Stay open to surprises, but avoid impulsive choices, right? So ultimately today, it's a day of what highlights the tension between our ideals and reality. It's about bringing together our dreams with practicalities today, being focused on healing and empowerment and the need for flexible change, which is the main theme of this week, right? Allowing space for both healing and change and deep emotional forgiveness. It adds to the motivation to take transformative action and look for spiritual insight and a deeper meaning. There can be surprising breakthroughs in relationship problems, but it adds to the emotional confusion and mixed signals of the week, and there can be sudden changes in love, and power struggles and stubbornness are really, amplified and increased, as well as us wanting to avoid reality and escape, right? So it's just best for self-compassion, self-love, staying open to new perspectives and grounding yourself with practical routines, because we need that grounding, right? In terms of the question to ask yourself, you can ask, where do you resist change out of fear or habit, and how might being open to uncertainty lead to deeper healing and empowerment? So that's a question that comes up quite a lot this week, but it's important, every day this week we need to ask ourselves, what are we afraid of, right? Because this week is really wanting us to focus on that. To integrate this energy, practice grounding, walk barefoot, cook, garden to connect with the Taurus energy, journal about recent emotional changes, think about what truth is trying to come out in your life, try a creative or spiritual activity to channel inspiration and release tension, right? On the 7th of November, the moon enters void of course, and Pluto's semi-square to the moon's north node is exact at 10:57, right? So in terms of integration question, if I covered the Pluto semi-square, right? At the beginning of the week, you can ask, where do you resist letting go of control, and how might surrendering just a little today open the door to real transformation? And to integrate today's energy, journal about a recurring challenge. What deeper lesson is it offering? Practice or sort meditation. Focus on releasing control and trusting the process, making one small conscious change in your routine that supports your long-term growth, right? On the 8th of November, we've got a lot going on. We've got Venus sextile conjunct to the moon's north node at 1:51 a.m. Venus making a biquintile to Saturn at 3:36. Venus making a square to Pluto at 3:44. The moon entering Gemini at 5:45. The sun making a trine to the moon's north node at 12:35. And Mars' contra power to Jupiter is exact at 4:08. And the moon enters its disseminating moon phase, right, at 5:40 p.m. So the moon in Gemini motivates curiosity and lively conversation and mental flexibility, but it can add to the restlessness this week, especially in our ability to focus. It's best used to connect, share ideas and keep things light. Venus' sextile conjunct to the moon's north node brings the chance to heal old relationship patterns. Negatively, it can stir up awkwardness or tension in social situations. The best use of this energy to notice who or what feels right and meant to be and reflect on your values. Venus by quintile to Saturn is nice sort of energy that increases our creative solutions to relationship and financial challenges today and this week, but it can add to us feeling restricted and unappreciated. The best use of this energy is to mix discipline with beauty and find structure and creativity. Venus is square to Pluto triggers deep transformation and passionate relationships, but it can add to power struggles, jealousy and emotional intensity. The best use of this energy is to face your fears in love and money and let go of what's toxic. The Sun makes a trine to the Moon's North Node, so it helps us to align with our soul path and bring supportive opportunities, but reminds us if we resist growth we may feel left behind. So the best use of this energy is to step confidently into your destiny and trust the doors that are opened. And the disseminating moon phase helps us share wisdom and spread our message, but it may bring a sense of anticlimax or fatigue after recent intensity. It's been a real intense week, right? So the best use of this energy is to teach, communicate and reflect on what you've learned. So this week is ultimately a chance to face what's hidden, release old baggage and step into your purpose. Face your shadow, do that shadow work. It highlights the need for honesty and courage. It's about transforming how we view and work with love, money and self-worth, allowing ourselves to work with our inner fire and trust our intuition. And this week highlights the gentle strength and playful resilience that comes from being open to your vulnerabilities, right? It's all about transforming what no longer serves you, communicating your truth, letting go of old patterns and stepping confidently to your destiny, being open to sharing wisdom when need be, and having the courage to move forward. It's a week of fated and meaningful conversations and deep healing and transformation in relationships and creative breakthroughs and disciplined progress. We can have the desire and need to have more ambition and confidence, but we just need to watch out for power struggles or jealousy in love and money this week, emotional intensity and fear of loss, restlessness and scattered focus, and overthinking or taking on too much and overpromising, right? The best week of this week's energies are to face hidden truths and release toxic patterns, share your story or wisdom with others, mix creativity with discipline for real progress, step confidently into new opportunities. And although relationships may feel intense, be brave and work with what's wanting to be shown in them. Avoid power plays, and you can ask yourself, how can you really accept yourself this week? And to work with today's energies, write down a fear or pattern you're ready to release or burn or tear it up as a ritual. Reach out to someone for meaningful conversations or to share wisdom, and practice mindful breathing when emotions run high and ground yourself in the present. So yeah, that's the end of the weekly scopes from the 2nd to the 8th of November. I'm Amani, your holistic astrological life coach. Take care and see you next time.